Lord Karan Bilimoria, welcome.
Thank you.
I've been looking forward to this. Tell me, who is Lord Karan Bilimoria?
Well, delighted to be here. In familiar territory because I used to work just down the road when I was qualifying to be a chartered accountant with what is today EY, with Ernst & Young.
So you knew exactly where you were
So
coming.
I know this area very well.
Yeah.
And I came to this country as a 19-year-old, and my family had been educated in the UK for 3 generations on both sides. So I knew from the time I was born I would be educated at some stage in my life in the UK. And I came here to study after having graduated in India. And my father was in the Indian Army, so I come from a military background. And we traveled around a lot. I went to 7 different schools, went to boarding school, went to university in India when I was just 16 years old. I was lucky. I skipped a couple of years, graduated at 19, came here, and I studied here for 7 years. I then came up with the idea for Cobra Beer when I was studying, and then decided not to be an investment banker, which would have been the normal course with a commerce degree, a law degree, and a qualified chartered accountant. I decided to do my own thing, and that's my background. And I come from the smallest minority community in the world. I'm a Zoroastrian Parsi. We're Persian origin. We left what is today Iran over 1,000 years ago as refugees to India and settled there. And we kept our religion, and we are tiny in India, less than 60,000 people, less than 100,000 in the whole world.
Beautiful introduction. There's a lot that's spinning in my head there. There's a lot of change for you when you're growing up, all those different schools, so very quick, if you like, into the education side of things. Do you think that stimulated the entrepreneurial side of things? Because the way you said about not going into investment banking, there might have been an expectancy, maybe from your father, family, but you chose that entrepreneurial route. Do you think that upbringing was a part of that?
I think the moving around a lot, you learn to adapt, you learn to make friends, you learn to make the most of any place you go. And I've learned from my parents and from literally being posted in every part of India, India is the most diverse country in the world in every way. It's most diverse in language, in race, in religion, in terrain, in every way. And I've lived in every part of India thanks to my father. And
it's huge as well, isn't it? I've travelled around it. Yeah. I remember just going from Udaipur to Agra, and it took like a day to get there. Just massive.
And of course, now the largest populous country in the world with 1.4 billion people and the fastest growing major economy in the world. And in fact, the London Business School, which very kindly made me an honorary fellow recently, and which I'm an alumnus through executive education, they asked me for their alumni magazine. When can you remember was the earliest time you thought you had the traits or the makings of being an entrepreneur? And I thought very hard about it. And actually, it was when I was 8 years old, and my father was commanding his battalion of Gurkhas. So I was brought up with Gurkhas. My father's battalion had won 3 Victoria Crosses in the Second World War. 2 of them survived, 1 was posthumous. And I grew up from my earliest memories with the 2 surviving Victoria Cross winners. I mean, what living legends. I mean, amazing inspiration. Heroes. And my father's posted right down on the tip of India in a state called Kerala in the south of India. And the capital is Trivandrum. So we went there, and I was 7 years old when we went there. And I went to the best school in Kerala, the local school called Loyola School, Jesuit school. To this day, it's the best school in Kerala. And I remember for my 8th birthday, I was given a kukri, a little kukri, the knife the Gurkhas use, as a present to me. And I can still picture in a green felt scabbard was this knife that was presented to me. I learned how to box at the age of 8. So I still box in the gym for fitness. And I learned at a very early age. And this school was very, very strict. And the priests were in their Jesuit robes. Once my teacher reported me to the headmaster because I brought comic books into the school. And the headmaster said, "You brought comic books?" I was caned straight away, on the spot, 8-year-old. And one day there was a diktat in the school. We learned everything in English. Said everyone will have to learn Malayalam, which is a local language of Kerala, as a second language, compulsory. I thought to myself, I don't want to do this. I went to the first Malayalam class and I literally switched off. I said, I'm wasting my time. My father's going to get posted out of here in a couple of years, and this language is going to be of no use to me for the rest of my life. Why am I doing this? So I went back and complained to my parents, and my father said, look, you've already been caned once. Go and learn Malayalam. So I went back to the class again, and I was even more dissatisfied. I went back to my parents, and I complained again. They said, now we're going to report you to the headmaster. I said, why can't they teach us Hindi? Hindi is the national language of India, and I'm going to have to learn Hindi as a second language later on in senior school, and that'll be useful to me, and I'm going to have to learn it. Why can't we learn Hindi? Because they don't have a Hindi teacher here. That's why you can't. And I planted a seed in my father's mind. He went and spoke. I said, why can't they get a Hindi teacher? They don't have one. So he went and spoke to and I said, there must be other children like me who are expats in the state from companies or armed forces who are going to be moving away, who want to learn Hindi. They don't have a Hindi teacher. So then he went and spoke to the headmaster and he said, look, my son has made the suggestion. Why don't you get a Hindi teacher? Within a month, we had a Hindi teacher. There were 26 of us in that class. And the lesson I learned there was, okay, I was rebellious. Maybe that's the trait of being an entrepreneur. But more important, entrepreneurship is all about problems and solutions. If there's a problem, most people, the attitude is to complain about the problem. You can complain forever. What are you going to do about it? What's the solution to it? And you find a solution, and then you have to act on the solution.
There's a discipline element to that as well. So if you look at what your father instilled in you and the respect that you have when you talk about him, and I can relate to that with a grandfather that was a brigadier in the army and a wing commander in the RAF, and that sort of ripples through to your upbringing. But I've also been someone that's questioned. I've also been someone that kind of calls out, why do I have to do that? And you either get punished for it and then you sort of shrink away, or you get punished for it and then you try and think of a kind of a solution and come up with the idea to solve it. That early journey, then Cobra and so on, you're still at the heart of the entrepreneur community. You're still so relevant and current. How have you managed to do that?
It is all about rising to the challenge of the time. And I can tell you many, many times from a young age, where I've had to get thrown in the deep end. So my father was posted to the UK for a couple of years as a lieutenant colonel, went back to India, and I went back to the only British boarding school in India to this day in South India. And I joined the school in April, and in May, they had the exams for the whole academic year. And I joined at the end of the academic year. So I was going to a strange school, coming back to India from England, adapting to all that, adapting to starting at boarding school for the first time. And I had to cover the whole syllabus in all the subjects in 4 weeks. What do? You just have to do it. And I was very lucky. The deputy headmaster was a former All Black rugby player. He said, what's your favorite sport? I said, I play all sport. Tennis is my favorite. He said, we haven't had a tennis tournament in a long time. He organized a tennis tournament just for me to make me settle in. What a great guy. And I was studying. And I did really well in those exams. And I never looked back. When I skipped 2 years and went to university at the age of 16 in Hyderabad in India, to one of the famous universities in India, Osmania University, I went straight in. I skipped my A-levels and the Indian equivalent. And all my other contemporaries were not only older than me, but they'd already studied. I did a commerce degree. They knew about accounting. They knew about economics, about management. It was all double Dutch to me. So I had to thrown in the deep end. What do? You've got to get through that first year. You've got to pass. And I did really well. And I got through and I never looked back. So, there are these times when you're just always facing challenges and you get on with it. When I became president of CBI, the Confederation of British Industry, as the first entrepreneur to become president, normally it's a grey-haired, FTSE 100 chair. Nothing wrong with them. Very respected individuals and very capable. But the first time an entrepreneur, first time an ethnic minority, first time an Indian, first time somebody relatively younger. I didn't plan it, but I was the president during the pandemic. And there you are having to completely work in the biggest global crisis since the Second World War. And you're not only trying to save the business community and economy, but also lives. And then you just go beyond what the normal remit. And then in the middle of it all, the Ukraine war started. And we ended up doing humanitarian work helping Ukraine. So that's not in your job description, not in your remit. But as an entrepreneur, you just rise to that challenge, you get on with it.
Is there one thing that stands out that you're most proud of?
By far, the thing I'm most proud of is my family.
I knew
so.
I should have said that, sorry, but that is so lovely to hear.
People say, and they're not a corny thing, people say, how do you do all the things you do? I have 3 main parts of my life. One is my entrepreneurial business life. The other is my parliamentary life. I've been in the House of Lords, very lucky to be there for 19 years, and I love that. And the other is my academic life. I've been a university chancellor twice. I hold fellowships at Oxford and Cambridge at the moment. And I also am in the midst of my business doctorate back at Cambridge University. So I'm actually back as a student. So those are my three buckets of my life. And I have to juggle all three every day, sometimes several times a day, flitting from one to the other. And you've got to have an ability, one, to prioritize, to be able to switch off from one thing to another thing. You can't do any of that without a fantastic team. And I've got a wonderful team supporting me. In spite of all those three buckets, the one that is the most important is my family. And I will always put my family first. The number of entrepreneurs and successful business people that I've met, successful people in any career, who said, you know what I regret? I missed out on my children growing up. I didn't attend my children's matches. I didn't go to the sports days. However busy I was building a business from scratch with all the challenges, and it was really tough. I mean, I nearly lost my business 3 times. I never missed a single parents' day. I never missed a single parents' meeting. I never missed any sports matches. I went through every terms report one-to-one with each of my children throughout their school career, every subject by subject with them. And I did that throughout.
Oh, I applaud you for that.
So that is, you know, and in the extreme case, in December 2024, we had a tragic accident. My older daughter fell from the balcony of our house in Cape Town, in which we've had for almost 2 decades, in her bedroom, and she fell, freak accident, broke her neck, injured her spinal cord, and was paralyzed. And I went in the ambulance with her. Normally, my wife would always look after the children when they haven't been well over the years. For some reason, I said, I'm going to be by her side. And right through the operation, the ICU, the rehab, residential rehab, outpatient rehab, and now she's back at work full time, and it's been a miracle, and God is great. But that, you just put your family first. Nothing else matters.
It's really important in this hustle culture, and we're both immersed in that sort of entrepreneurial world. And I was given invaluable advice by a number of people older than me when I was starting a business and becoming a dad for the first time. And they were all saying, John, doesn't matter how much money I've made, I have one regret. And it was literally like a worn record. Yeah. Spend time with your family. Yeah. Do not be the guy that goes and makes loads of money or tries to make loads of money and doesn't spend time with the kids, and then that's your biggest regret. So the accolades, the awards, the things that you've achieved outside of family, what stands out for you as you're most proud of?
Outside my family, I'm by far really, really proud of having created a household brand from scratch that didn't exist. You know, I started in 1990. I was against all the odds. Every Indian restaurant I went into to try and sell Cobra when I started had Carlsberg. Traditionally, because Veeraswamy, the oldest Indian restaurant, is about to celebrate its centenary next year. The King of Denmark used to love Veeraswamy. You send them Carlsberg beer from Denmark.
I didn't know this.
They used to sell Carlsberg, and then of course when other Indian restaurants opened up, they wanted to be like Veeraswamy, so they'd all sell Carlsberg. So by the time you came to thousands of Indian restaurants, almost 100% of them all sold Carlsberg. And then they had Kingfisher, which was the biggest beer brand in India. That was 8 years before I even started. So it was against all the odds. I mean, they didn't need another beer, and my beer had to provide something that was going to be a benefit to the restaurant and a benefit to the consumers. And it was this less gassy, extra smooth taste, which sat in between a lager and an ale, the refreshment of lager, the smoothness of an ale combined, that made it not only a really drinkable beer, but the best beer to go with any food, and especially spicy food. And the benefit of that is that, A, as long as people are drinking responsibly, you'll sell more beer because it's smooth. The restaurant will sell more food because people are not bloated drinking gassy lagers. They'll eat more. And you've got happier customers who have a lovely beer that they enjoy.
Win-win all round.
So that's how I managed to get in with the real benefit that was provided, a feature and a benefit in classic marketing terms that genuinely worked. And we built Cobra from scratch, from restaurants door to door. And I went to the top restaurants first. I got them to sell it. I was more expensive than the others. You've got to have the guts and be bold to be more expensive and say, my product's different, it's better. Big bottles, which was a challenge. That's the way beer is sold in India. And then I built it up from there and got into other restaurants and eventually the supermarkets and then beyond restaurants and export to 40 countries. But it is today a household name in any corner of the United Kingdom. And I love that. And most importantly, people love the product.
Do you back other entrepreneurs? And if you do, have you got a scenario where it's the person or the idea and the marriage of those two, of course, the great idea, concept, and the entrepreneur you just described is is the win-win. But have you ever had a scenario where there's an opportunity you think that could be brilliant, but the actual founder, the entrepreneur, is the wrong fit? And how would you get past that?
In fact, just the other day, I asked a financier who'd backed me going back a few years ago, and I said, why did you back us? And he said, one, I genuinely thought you had a good business and a good brand, but I also believed in you as the entrepreneur, and I knew I could trust you because you have so many experiences where people let down people who backed them or invest in them by being unethical. He said, with you, I knew that you would try your best and it would work out, and it worked out very well. So it is a combination of the two. You know, you can have a great idea, but if the founder entrepreneur is not the right person, and the key there is this word integrity. And it's a how do you define integrity? Doing the right thing, and you give you lots of definitions. The best definition of integrity that I've ever heard is when I welcomed Rowan Williams, who's now Lord Williams, fellow crossbencher, who was the Archbishop of Canterbury. He came to the Zoroastrian Centre, my community in Harrow, and the patron of the community, and I welcomed him and made the welcoming speech. And when he then made a speech, and he said, Lord Bilimoria has used the word integrity 3 times in his speech, and the Zoroastrian Parsi community have a reputation for having integrity. And he said the word integrity comes from the Latin and Greek words integer, integrum, that means wholeness. You cannot practice integrity if you're fragmented in front of the light. You can only practice integrity if you're whole and complete as a human being. So integrity is key, and if you can see integrity in somebody and you can trust them, then it usually works out.
I'm so enjoying this conversation. There's a whole conversation to have about kind of failure and success and how entwined they are. Just listening to the person that backed you there, and the fact that they trusted you and they could see the drive, but also that you come through what you could have perceived as failure. You know, the obstacles that you were going around them, you were smashing them over, looking to get to the next stage. What is your relationship with failure? Do you even see it as a thing?
Of course, there's that attitude that failure is not an option. You've got to try and succeed. But there is a flip side to it. So one is one of my favorite sayings is good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. So you've got to make the mistakes and learn from the mistakes and move on. So I think failure is a part of success. You've got to fail to succeed in many ways. And I failed many, many times. I've made many mistakes. You've then also got to be able to adapt or die. And I could give you example after example of, if you don't adapt, your business fails, and I wouldn't be here talking to you. I give lectures to the armed forces, and when you went to the services, and their decisions of adapt or die literally, sadly, is die. You know, you make the wrong decision, people will die. If you're a surgeon operating, if you make a mistake, somebody could die. In a business, it could be your business not surviving. And the quickest example I could give you is when Cobra Beer was being imported from India, from Bangalore, for the first 7 years. In the 7th year, our sales took off. They doubled in 1 year. We were the biggest export beer out of India ever. Hundreds of containers coming across from Bangalore. My problems of importing Cobra quadrupled. The brewery couldn't cope. They did their best. Restaurants were complaining about quality. Wholesalers were complaining. Consumers were complaining. And I said, look, I'm going to have to brew under license in the UK. That's what everyone else does. Oh, no. If you do that, we'll stop buying from you. No one will buy Cobra. It's an authentically imported beer from India. I said, well, what choice do I have? You're complaining. That's your problem. So you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And I remember the most important person with a consumer brand is the consumer. I said, let me ask the consumer, what's important to the consumer? And we filled out surveys in those days. There was no survey monkey. You had to go and give forms to people. They had to write out. Is it the extra smooth, less gassy taste? Is it the fact that it's imported from India? Is it the fact that it's an authentic Indian recipe? Is it the fact that it's a premium beer? What's the most important thing to you about Cobra? Rank 1, 2, 3, 4. Most important thing to them by far. Extra smooth, less gassy taste. Least important thing to them by far, imported from India. I'm brewing here. I moved the production here. I paid the brewery in India every penny that I owed them. I didn't claim any credits for all the problems that we had. And to this day, the owners of that brewery who've sold out since then are our closest family friends. All these years later, we've done no business since. And the relationship that we built. And those same wholesalers, after I moved the production to the UK, all my quality was then world class. I could do draft beer, which I couldn't do from India. And those same wholesalers said, we'll never buy from you again. We're buying much more from me. So that is the adapt or die.
Brilliant story. There's a a relentlessness with you and the things you've gone through and accomplished and achieved. How have you made time for your kind of mental and physical fitness? There's a countless success books out there and podcasts about getting up at 4 a.m. and running a marathon, reading a book, meditating before the day starts to fit it in. And you are a successful businessman and entrepreneur. What works for you? What have you got a morning routine?
I belong to an organization called YPO, the Young Presidents Organization, one of the best things I've done in my life. I've been a member for 25 years. And there we meet as a forum, a group of us every 6 weeks usually. And we discuss our personal lives, our family life, and our business life confidentially. And when you're looking at your life in those, from that point of view, and you look at your personal life, it's got to be about mind, body, and spirit. So I try and do a little bit of meditation every morning. Every time I wake up, and before I get out of bed, I do a little bit of meditation. And I'm religious in that I'm a practicing Zoroastrian Parsi. I say my prayers every day. Since what happened to my daughter, I thank God every day for saving my daughter. And also, you've got to keep yourself fit. So I play tennis, I'm in the gym, I box with a trainer when I can, I scuba dive, I'm active.
Yeah,
and I think you've got to keep active. And
it keeps your mental fitness sharp as well by being active, right?
And you've got to try and stay physically fit and active as well. And in Parliament, because my office is outside the main building, with the estate you're dotted around, I could easily do 10,000 steps a day, just walking to vote and speak and rushing between the two buildings up and down.
I mentioned that word success when we're talking about failure and then leading into this part of the conversation. How would you describe your version of success?
Success is a very relative term. And there's that sort of corny saying that success it's not a destination, it's a journey. And I still feel right now that yes, I've been lucky to have been given lots of opportunities and achieved some things. All these honorary doctorates, I felt like a complete fraud. I haven't done the real thing, so I'm doing the real thing. I've always wanted to do it, so I'm actually doing it.
Comes back to your integrity.
So, but I still feel I've got so much more to achieve and to do, and that I want to do. And then people say, well, okay, I give a talk. In my talk, sometimes I talk about the best lecture I've ever heard and been at, which was at Harvard Business School, where I did some executive education. I'm an alumnus through exec ed at Harvard, through YPO. And Professor Clay Christensen gave us the final lecture just before I became an alumnus. And it's the best lecture in my life because his message in that lecture was, what is the purpose of your life? Ask yourself, what is the purpose of your life and how will you measure your life? It's a very individual question, very individual answer. He's written a book, How Do You Measure Your Life? And if I think about it myself, I think, what is the purpose of my life? And I've been inspired by my maternal great-grandfather. And he was an entrepreneur. He was a public servant. He looked after his family very well. He was a great community man. He was a member of the House of Lords in India. And in many ways, I followed in his footsteps 4 generations later. Now, if anything I do in this lifetime can inspire anyone 4 generations from now, it would have been worth it.
I love that. And do you know what? I had a question for you lined up about role models. I was going to ask you who potentially had been your role model, and you've just told me there's a crisis in young boys right now, which was highlighted by the Centre for Social Justice report, the Lost Boys report. And I just wonder what your thoughts are on that, because the way you talked about your maternal grandfather there, and I have that respect, I have that, role model element to my grandfathers and to other people around me, if you like. What's gone wrong there? What needs to be fixed for what is clearly, again, a crisis of young boys growing up that feel lost and don't feel like they've got an identity, and then they're playing with addictive algorithms of social media, which of course take them to all the worst role models potentially out there.
And it is a serious challenge and a serious problem. And to me, there are 2 role models. One is my maternal great-grandfather, the other is my own father. And I would say that people who haven't been lucky enough to have role models at close quarters that I have had, there are people. So that's why I think it's very important that in schools, in universities, that young people are exposed to entrepreneurship, have a chance to listen to successful entrepreneurs and get inspired by them. And that's what you need, is that inspiration. And it doesn't have to be your own father, your own great-grandfather to be a role model. If you don't have that, it can be somebody else. And the more we can get entrepreneurship into the schools, into the universities, and there are some schools that do it brilliantly, where I go and talk regularly, those children have a huge advantage because they know about it, they experienced it. So, and my father, I mean, again, the things I learned from my father, he was a big general in the end. He commanded 350,000 troops in the Central Indian Army. It's huge. But what struck me was how he would inspire me, the memories of when he would praise people publicly. And you could see that when he praised someone, a young officer, come on, listen to this. Do you know what he did the other day? You could see the person brimming with pride and everybody else was listening. And, you know, that the effect, I've heard...
How you make people feel.
I've heard stories from people now, those lieutenants and captains who are now generals, who have told me stories. One of them, when my father was deputy commandant of the Indian Military Academy as a major general, a chief instructor, this cadet went in and he told me, this brigadier who was here, posted here in the UK as a military attaché, and he said, I have to tell you this story. I walked in as a cadet expecting to be expelled from the military academy. And my father said, I know exactly what you've done. Why did you do it? And he said, well, I did it to protect somebody, sir. He said, I know it. I know that's why he did it. It was wrong and you shouldn't have done it. I'm going to give you a chance. And he said, I was expecting to just walk out of the academy then. Your father gave me that chance and look at me now, I'm becoming a general. Another one I met, as a captain, had broken down in the middle of the desert, his jeep. And my father, then as a brigadier and as a general, he was driving past his whole convoy. And they went past, and then suddenly this whole convoy reversed. And the windscreen wound down, and it was my father. Young man, what's happened? He said, sir, we're stranded, we've got no contact, we're broken down, it's getting dark. Don't worry. Radio help for them straight away. He waited till the help, they'll be here soon. And he went off. And that chap has never forgotten that all his life, saying any other person would have just driven on.
Wow, I feel quite emotional.
So that,
as well. Amazing.
That magnanimity, you know, to be a magnanimous leader.
Yeah.
When he was once in war, his brigadier, he was a colonel, lieutenant colonel, said, I want that town taken by breakfast. And my father said, no, I'm not going to do it. He said, I'm going to court-martial you disobeying orders. He said, I'll get it to you by lunchtime. Why? I don't want to waste lives. I'm going to lose enough lives getting it to you by lunchtime. By breakfast, I'll lose too many lives. And I'll get it to you by lunchtime. And I will still sadly lose lives. And he did. And he got it by lunchtime.
Phenomenal stories and leadership that can only inspire. And I think, you know, hope you feel for me the respect and kind of pride I have in being able to talk to you today, because I look forward to this. You know, I had grandparents that when my grandfather was stationed with the RAF, travelled all around India. So that trip I went on,
gosh.
Yeah, I haven't told you this. So I got to travel all around India as a very young man, paid for by my grandparents, because they wanted me to see how beautiful the country is, see how amazing the people were, because they lived there for years and loved it. But that discipline with humility is what you've just articulated so beautifully. You know, like a leader that could be very authoritative and what are you doing, but listens. That's the key, isn't it? Listens, and even if you're potentially disobeying or done something wrong, knowing that actually if it's for the right reason, goes back to the entrepreneur side of things. You know, if there's a solution that you can explain and then go, okay, I see why you're trying to do it. God, I could talk to you.
So my mother's father was a squadron leader in the Royal Indian Air Force, and now I'm a serving honorary group captain in the Royal Air Force, which I love.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's been an honor.